You're listening here live on the coolest of the cool, the Coolly Cool Show with your host, Brent, kicking it here live on this Wednesday night. Yes, we're kicking here live on this Wednesday night. Oh boy, baby, do we have a lot to talk about what's going on in the world today? If you read the title of this episode, you know where I'm going to be going at with this. And if you haven't already done so already, be sure to follow us on our other social media platforms. You can also follow me on my Instagram page at Brent the Champ. You can also follow me on my YouTube and TikTok channel, The Coolly Cool Show. You can also follow my Twitter at CoollyCool2412. Make sure you follow, like, and subscribe for all the latest of the, things going on in the news. And as always, we're rocking it from coast to coast, north to south, and yes, maybe even in Antarctica. And if you're in Antarctica listening, give us a shout out. Let us know what you think of this show and if it's still cold. We're going to get started in just a few seconds. Layer live on the coolest of the cool, the Coolly Cool Show with your host, Brent. Yes, you are listening here. Do not change your radio station. We have begun to come into your station. We have plenty of vodka to drink and plenty of techno music to go around. We love to shake our groove things on the dance floor, and that is what we do. Duh. Alright, so as if you already know right now, first of all, I'd just like to thank each and every one of you for tuning in and listening to the coolest of the cool, the Coolly Cool Show here with your host, Brent. Like I said, time in, time before, if you haven't already told, you are special. So, as a topic of discussion, because sometimes talking about these topics, it goes very, very quickly, And I want to get enough time to talk about this, and I want to know, what do other people think about it? Get your mind wandering, get your mind thinking. So the topic of this episode tonight is called Cold War Revisited. It's a hot topic right now. If you've been following the news, you've been following what's going on around the world, there is, let's just say, there seems to be an issue as far as one country wanting to take over another country, and one country and other countries are pretty much saying no. I touched on this in my other podcast kind of briefly about the whole situation, how I felt about it. Kind of elaborate on my ideas, my thoughts into this, and I did a little more research, did a little more digging, did a little more, let's see, unraveling the whole mystery and the reason to why, one country would want to try to invade another country, and these countries are over in Europe, so gonna get into that. We'll talk about that a little bit right now. So, if you haven't already known, Russia is the hot topic of discussion all around the whole social media. I don't think social media, I'm going to say it around the news world. Social media, they're too busy wanting to do their new TikTok dances and things of that nature, so that's the hot popular thing with that. But around the country and around the world, it's all eyes right now are on Europe, all eyes are on Russia, all eyes are on Ukraine. Following the news, you're watching the news. Oh, things are brewing up. Things are brewing up. There seems to be, almost as far as what many can tell, a possible invasion. Russian forces, Russian military forces seem to be gearing up for a possible invasion into the country of Ukraine. This is gets real as it does, folks. And if you're probably thinking like, this doesn't affect me. I live here in the United States, man. I'm telling you right now, this has serious implications for the United States and our allies, but also for the European countries that are going to be having to deal with this if and when Russia does invade into Ukraine. And me personally, I don't think they're probably going to do, I don't think Russia's going to try to invade, and the keyword I'm saying, I don't think they're going to try to invade Ukraine right now, meaning during this period. I do think eventually, maybe in the coming weeks, we're going to see them probably position themselves to where they will do a full-on blow. Am I not saying it right? Man, I get so tongue-tied. A full-on invasion into the country of Ukraine, and it's going to kickstart a lot of stuff. And if you've done any research on those countries in that area, you're going to find out a lot of stuff, man. A lot of stuff. You got to delve into it, you got to read into it and see, that there's stuff that's been brewing for quite some time. Just as far as we had saw, I believe, over the last summer, dealing with the Palestine and Israel. There's a lot of stuff that's been brewing, and now political leaders are now going to try to capitalize on any means and any way they possibly see as though they can. Like I said, this has huge ramifications for if Russia does. Like I said, I don't think Russia's going to be doing it within the next couple of days. I don't think they're going to do it. I think in the coming weeks, and I'm using plural, in the coming weeks, we might eventually end up seeing Russia end up going ahead at a strategic point in time where they end up do invade into the country of Ukraine. And I'm telling you right now, it's not going to look pretty. Not going to look pretty for anybody on either side. And this is just my thought process, because obviously, one, U.S. does not want to get dragged into a conflict in Europe. They do not want to get dragged into a conflict in Europe, and they don't want to get dragged into a conflict where it could be a potential war with another country, thus as Russia, after having just been finished a war that lasted about 20 years. And if you know what I'm talking about, the war in Afghanistan, which we saw last year, which triggered a lot of people as far as a major withdrawal from Afghanistan. And I've had my podcast earlier about that, and I talked about that. And that, I'm not going to lead into any kind of conspiracy theories or any links as to what's going on now. I might bring it up a little bit later just to kind of shine a little light on it. Shine this little light of mine. But this situation going on is very intense. That's why I said this could be kind of right now. We probably could, if everything resolves as it kind of we hope for the best outcome, and even if it doesn't resolve the way we want to go on a smooth plane, we're looking at another Cold War. I don't care what you say. I don't care what anyone says. I don't care what the political leaders say, like on television. Oh, we're working in talks. No, we're entering into another Cold War with Russia. And reason why is because right now, they're doing something we don't want them to do. And they seem to not be listening. And at this point in time, like, talks with Russia aren't, right now, they are doing the talks along with, well, mainly it's NATO and its allies, and the United States, obviously, and the rest of our allies are in talks with Russia, and they're trying to figure where they're at, and trying to say, so why are you trying to invade Ukraine? And, Russia's saying, we're gearing up, and they haven't really formally said we're going to be invading, but in the longevity and the knowledge, the know-how, and the hearsay, and how things are kind of moving in the political scene and pushing your military toward it, you wouldn't be doing any of this stuff unless you're anticipating into invading in another country. You don't just gear up and do certain military exercises along the lines here without giving proper notifications. Says, hey, we got something going on here. We're just going to let you know about this. It's nothing to be alarmed about. It's just this is what we're doing. Okay? But they did it, and they're doing it where they're like, yeah, we have the right to do this, but it's like all out of a sudden they're doing it. And there's lots behind them wanting to do this. It's not to be practicing exercise runs. No. They're gearing up to go invade Ukraine. And it's, like I said, it's probably going to happen in the next couple of days. It's going to probably be some weeks down the line that this event is something's going to happen. Now, I don't want people to believe that it's going to be shoot nuclear whistles, other nuclear missiles. We're not there. I don't think Russia's that crazy enough to go ahead and do that. That's not in the best interest of anybody, any countries, to do anything like that. I don't think nuclear, things are even on the table. I think it's more or less just people trying to go into people's, area. That somebody's trying to go into somebody else's neighbor or home and says, yeah, I'm going in there. Be like, you don't live here. But reading the news and CBS News, and they talk and pretty much Biden had warns Putin with personal sanctions. I don't know what the type of sanctions are, but they're personal sanctions. And this could affect the Russian president, kind of so-called, I guess, things that the United States and or NATO and its allies might have kind of grant leniency allowing Russia to do, and this might be those personal sanctions. I mean, Russia's pretty much has said Russia ridicules Biden's remarks about sanctioning Putin if Russia launches an invasion. So that's pretty much what Russia's pretty much saying, you know what? we don't like what you said, and if you do try to sanction us, it's not good. It's going to be meaningless to us. That pretty much is saying they're going to do what they want to do. That they're saying they want to do what they want to do. I mean, look at this. It's just if Putin were to send roughly about 100,000 troops to the border of Ukraine's border, it was noted that said this would be the largest invasion since World War II. It would change the world. That's the quote. Now, I mean, look at it. How that's saying is, first, like I said, if you were going to send 100,000 troops to the border of Ukraine, why would you be doing that? Any large-scale military presence along any border is going to raise thumbs and eyebrows. And look here. When we were in Kuwait and we were invading into Iraq, obviously we had the numbers, and it was no surprise. And we were going to be invading into Iraq, and it was just kind of a period of time. But then the lines with that, we were going in there for a particular reason. But you don't gear military, you don't gear military your assets and your capabilities along a border and not have others think that you're not going to be invading. You're going to be invading. Like I said, during 2003, we launched Tomahawk missiles into Baghdad, and we were pretty much sitting at the border of Kuwait waiting to run in and go in. And once you get the call, bam, we went in. Like I said, you stage everything to get ready to go ahead and in. And like I said, you got right now Ukraine that's getting they're getting weaponries and warships all sent over to their country by NATO and the U.S. and now its allies into their country, because you have to figure that they have to be up and ready, because I don't know whether many of you know this, but Ukraine is the second largest on the continent after Russia. So Russia comes first, then Ukraine is the second of those Slavic countries all surrounding it. And I'll get into the Slavic countries, and as far as what I found and what a pattern seems to be or could be trending if Ukraine is invaded, and if we and other allies in NATO don't do anything about this. But like I said, you don't put your pieces and get it geared up if you're not intending to do something. And it's gotten to the point where it's really bad. Like, I mean, I'm telling you right now that things are pretty stressful. If you were living in Ukraine right now, you'd probably be sitting there thinking, oh my gosh, I can't believe this is about to freaking happen. Or it's getting close to actually happening. You'd be freaking up in arms, frightened, and terrified. Because you're like, holy cow. Especially considering we're not in the early stage of the 19th century. We're not in the early stage where we're in the kind of digital and mass technical era where we got stuff that can kind of super blitzkrieg you in a matter of a couple hours. And like I said, that's where the frightening part comes. That's where the scariness comes part, is the fact that stuff like this can happen really quickly. And that's why, obviously, you have to do the diplomacy. You have to do the talk. You have to sit down, talk, figure out what they're coming from, why they want, what's going on. And then if they're not willing to listen, you have to come out with the sanctions to try to tell them, if you do this, we're going to be sanctioning you, we're this and that, and we're not putting up with it, because overall, it's not going to benefit anybody. Because some of these countries that are like all warmongering, more hungry about, oh, let's do this like this, you kind of wonder where their head's at sometimes, because some other countries are not really like that. A lot of people like to tend that the United States is, oh, we're all about war hunger, we're about to do this and that. Because the last couple of conflicts the United States has actually been in, and maybe other countries find that since the United States has been in a lot of conflicts, they're like, oh, you think you will know all about war and this and that? Well, we're going to get our slice of piece of pie because we want to be able to use our missiles, our capabilities, our soldiers, our troops in order to kick people's ass. And maybe that might be some type of thing hanging in the back of the head of some other countries that haven't been in a conflict, that haven't had the capabilities, but when they reach this point where they have the ability to be or to show their strength, they want to muster their might. You know, I mean, wasn't it just last year? Weren't we talking about? Well, I'm sorry, wasn't it about the last couple of years? I was saying about the last 3 years. Weren't we just talking about issues going on with North Korea? I'm pretty sure we were having issues as far as, oh my gosh, we might end up getting into a war with North Korea. North Korea this, North Korea that. Things on the table were getting kind of, oh snap, things are going to be coming to a head pretty soon. But before then, there was an issue as far as, while we were still in theater at an active war zone, i.e. Afghanistan and Iraq, because we didn't fully pull out guys out of Iraq, but weren't we in somewhat of a conflict dealing with issues in Iran? So as far as I'm concerned, going back to that, we're actively involved in 2 conflicts, and then we have issues going on in Iran, and then from that point, it kind of turned into a little bit to a Syria situation, which many people, if you remember a couple of years ago, that Donald Trump, we had caught one of the major terrorist generals, one of the terrorist generals for, I think, Al-Qaeda or whatever, and he was in, I forgot where he was. He was in Syria or something, I can't remember. Or might even think another part. But I do remember it was Syrian government had launched biological nuclear chemicals on its own people, and the U.S. responded by bombing the shit out of their chemical factories and personnel. And then that's where some of our military personnel in the Middle East there was a bomb raid that had came down onto one of near the bases. But to how are they going to play this? What actions are they going to take in the event if, or Russia, it's going to stir up a lot of pots. So you see China kind of laying low, kind of like, look, I'm going to stay on the side over here. I'm going to be neutral for right now. I'll get back being on what I need to do in a little bit, but I'm going to be neutral. Games, Call of Duty, Modern Warfare, you kind of wonder what the heck. What are you doing? Well, maybe they wouldn't be the bad guy if they wouldn't be trying to do some real bad guy moves and tactics, probably. Things like that. That would take them out of the limelight of being a bad guy. It's like some actors that are in Hollywood that are prone to just play bad guy roles because they look like a bad guy. That doesn't even make any sense, because if you know anything about bad people exist in all shapes, sizes, and forms. But sometimes when you characterize yourself as always being the bad guy, then you're going to be labeled the bad guy and constantly be thrown into the bad guy element and role. So there's stuff that you have to look at that. But I'm going to point out some very details, like I said, as far as some of the backstory, as far as why Russia is setting their pieces in stone and getting their pieces ready with this whole situation with Ukraine. They said Ukraine is the second largest continent after Russia, Russia being the first. So, and I'm going to read these other countries that surround Ukraine. You have Belarus, Moldova, Romania, the Bulgarian, Hungary, Slovakia, and Poland. Alright? Now, out of all those countries that I just named, which country in geographic size is bigger? If you don't know it, it's Ukraine. Ukraine is the bigger country than all of them. Like I said, they're the second largest compared to Russia. And let's see here. Emerged only in the late 20th century after the long periods of dominance by Poland, the Lithuanians, Russia, and the USSR. Unraveled in the 1990-91. The legislature of Ukraine's SSR declared sovereignty in July 16th, 1990. Then independence. Then they claimed their independence August 24th, 1991. So, you had Ukraine declare their independence in 1991. Let's see. And just listen to it then. Belarus was retaken by Stalin. And if you don't know anything about Stalin, Stalin is the former leader, dictator of the Soviet Union back in the 1940s during World War I. He took over. He was retaken after the Germans had taken the territory there in 1944. Well, Stalin retook it in 1944. And the Soviet Union had control of it up until their fall. And Belarus claimed their independence August 25th, 1981. Moldovan was part of the Soviet Union in World War II, and they didn't declare their independence until 1991. Romania was part of the Soviet Union from World War II, from 1944 to 1990, until they declared their independence. The Bulgarians, did not become did not declare their sovereignty until 1989, and then later into 1991. Hungary. Now listen to this one. Hungary was part of the Soviet Union and had a Hungarian revolution in 1956. But the USSR, who was control of Hungary, crushed them and swiftly just kind of decimated the whole revolution that was going on there until the fall of the Soviet Union in messed up on naming. They were all at one point in time controlled by the former USSR, Soviet Union, aka Russia, back in the day for so many years. And then up until the fall of the Soviet Union in the late 80s, did these countries all establish their sovereignty in 1990. And then finally made their independence, declared their independence in 1991. And then that's when Russia started trying to rebuild itself up after the collapse of their Russian Empire. So Russia's trying to rebuild. So you're looking at a time period of about 30 years where Russia has been building and trying to get their government and the economy and military back up to once where they were in the eyes of the world as a world power, as dominance in the world power realm. And now, since they can have their stuff built up, they feel as though now they can flex their muscle, flex their ability, and now seemingly look to as claiming what was once theirs, and in doing so are looking at the possibility of starting armed conflict with those countries that have already declared their independence away from formerly being held under by the Soviet Union. So I'm going to leave it there, and I'm going to milk it a little bit more when we get back, but I'm going to take a break. I'm going to go get something to drink, and we'll be back with some more of the coolest of the cool, the Coolly Cool Show. So, I'll be right back. All right, just sit tight. We got some more to talk about this whole Russian, Ukraine, NATO, and allies, and U.S. whole thing. We'll be right back. I'm going to go get something to drink, so, all right, stick tuned with more of the coolest of the cool, the Coolly Cool Show. Be right back in 1 second.
Come on. 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 Come on.
Yes, you're back here live with the coolest of the cool, the Coolly Cool Show with your host Brent, kicking here live on this Wednesday night. I hope it's Wednesday because I've been saying it's Wednesday. Sometimes I can't remember half time. I don't know. But getting here live on the coolest of the cool, the Coolly Cool Show. If you don't already, be sure to follow me on my other social media platforms. Follow me on my YouTube and TikTok channel, both labeled the Coolly Cool Show. You can also follow me on my Instagram page. It's called Brent_the Champ. All right, Brent_the Champ. You can also follow me on my Twitter account at CoollyCool2412, where I give latest updates when I'm going live. Now, you can also be sure to hear us on other social media platforms. So, check us out. Oh yeah, oh yeah, oh yeah, oh yeah, oh yeah. Yeah. So we last left off talking about as far as the Russia and Ukraine not incident, nothing's really happened yet, but as far as the possibility of Russia probably invading Ukraine within the next couple of weeks, not next days, but a couple of weeks, and how the United States has been trying to talk with Russia along with its allies and NATO allies, and if something were to happen, I didn't say this before, if something were to happen, the U.S. is bound by its agreement between the, I guess I forgot what it's called, the NATO and something, I forgot what it is, bound to help out in reference to the situation this way, of what if Russia were to invade Ukraine. I list off a name of countries as far as those countries and being closest around it. And the reason why I did that, because the fact is, if Ukraine were to fall to Russia and a possible invasion, then what's stopping Russia from deciding to say, hey, I want Romania, or hey, I want the Bulgarians, Bulgaria, I want Hungary. They used to be part of us. Well, I want it. Now you're leading down a road that it seems very resentment of what happened in the conflict with World War One and World War Two, where German occupation, Germany controlled certain areas, and they were like, "Oh, we want this, we want that. Okay, they belong to us. Okay, sure, let us have that, this." And then they kept progressing. And then you end up seeing how it happened in World War II, where Germany did the exact same thing. Like, well, they belong to us. That was our part of our land. That was our part of the people. We just want what is back from ours. So it gets to the point where it's like, okay, all right, well, you can have that. That's back to yours. And the next, they're like, okay, well, we want this. We're like, oh, you can't have it. No, they're part of us too. It's like, okay, just not anymore. Okay, thanks. And they're like, they were part of us too. But like, no, man. Well, what are you gonna do about it? And then by that time, their numbers outweigh, and then the size of them has been grown so much, and it's like, what in the hell? You just create a monster, and then the only way to end it is to fight back. And like I said, it is a Europe problem, but the Europe problem is everybody's problem, because Europe's had these issues since way back before BC time, way back before probably the first civilizations and everything. It's always to deal with, hey, these lands used to be ours, the territories used to be ours, they used to be our people, we want our people, we're going to go and take it. It's a conflict. And like I said, it doesn't seem like the same trend that Russia's trying to follow as they're trying to say, hey, they used to be part of us, we want them back. And strictly, the rest of the world is saying, they've already declared their independence, they're fine, they are who there is, they're who they are. And then sometimes you have people here in the United States who will go up in arms and says, oh yeah, this country's doomed, Putin's been talking right, and he's talking correct. I'm like, you're kind of been brainwashed into what you are been fabricated by listening and seeing what Russia, is putting out there. It's propaganda. Matter of fact, isn't the Russians the one to start the propaganda? I mean, look how North Korea is. I mean, North Korea is pretty much all about propaganda. And guess who they get it from? Russia, with propaganda. The Soviet Union. Am I lying? I'm not lying. I mean, honestly, look at the entire way their whole structure is built upon. It is built on the Soviet Union. Everything. And it's just North Korea. But they were established by what? By Soviet Union ways. Their whole dictatorship. Their whole way of how they see things. How they're doing things. I mean, you have to kind of look at this as far as what the whole thing is. And then you wonder back to when the Cold War started in the 1950s, right after the Korean War, and then all the way up to the Cuban Missile Crisis. And you look back behind there and how the United States was trying to stop the spread of communism, or more or less stop the spread of having a dictatorship trying to vastly control everything about people, human beings, their way of life, not having the grant of the freedoms, the expressions of other countries who operate on the system of democracy. And it's like, look back in history at how things are all regressed. Look at the Vietnam conflict. You look at Iraq, Iran from the 70s and 80s with Iran and Iraq conflict back then, where Iran and Iraq had wars. And you kind of look at how things were set and how things were moving. And at this point in time, you still have certain country. You still think people think that Russia's not trying to be a dictatorship or trying to take over and try to show their stuff? No, they're trying it. But they're just doing it in a different way. They're masking what their true agenda is by just probably saying, hey, we're just doing one thing. But trust me, the full story's not going to be totally divulged, but some of it eventually maybe will. So it's going to be interesting to see what's going to happen for the upcoming weeks. We will see. Oh, man, we then came to the end of the show. Here live on the Coolest of the Cool, the Coolly Cool Show. I might do something on my Twitter. I think they have like a Twitter conversation thing or something like that. I might poke my head and trying to do something like that. I don't know. Maybe I might do it tonight. I don't know, but I might be talking about myself on there. But But if you're listening and have listened to my podcast, I'd like to thank each and every one of you for tuning in to my podcast here live on the Coolest of the Cool, the Coolly Cool Show with your host, Brent. I think it's a very interesting topic that we got to talk about tonight here with Russia, Ukraine. I just want to put out there, I'm not against Russia. I'm not against the whole Slavic countries there. I mean, everybody, we all work together. They got some stuff over there we like. We got stuff that they like. I mean, we all live here on this planet. We all should get along together. And that's the whole thing. So, you heard it here live with the Coolest of the Cool. The Coolly Cool Show with your host, Brent. Tune in for some more. Be sure to follow us on our other social media platform. Follow me on my Twitter account at CoollyCool2412. You can follow me on my TikTok and YouTube channel, both labeled The Coolly Cool Show. My podcast automatically uploaded to my YouTube channel. You can also be sure to follow me on my Instagram page at Brent_the champ. So, as always, take care and bye.